Hello, this is Dr. Prentiss Taylor from Doctor on Demand with the latest in our webinar series on COVID-19 vaccines. We're going to now be diving into the science of mRNA and having you understand what that's all about in terms of beginning to trust and make decisions about these vaccines and help us get through this pandemic. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So this is the second in our series. We're going to go on to the next slide that goes over these vaccines. Just briefly about me, it's in the first of the webinar series, but I'm an internal medicine, preventive medicine physician, vice president of medical affairs here at Doctor on Demand, which is the leading innovative national telemedicine company. And this slide tells you where I trained and so on. Let's go on to the next slide. We want to answer a common question. What is messenger RNA, also known as mRNA? Let's go to the next slide and we'll begin to unpack that for you. I want you to understand that this type of science and this type of technology is not new. Our tax dollars have funded research at the National Institutes of Health here in the United States for 17 years up to now on messenger RNA and understanding how the production of proteins works in terms of the genetic material and the genetic instructions. So mRNA is a string of code molecules that teaches the body how to make proteins. It does not enter the nucleus of cells. It does not interact with DNA. So if I could pause there, a question that a lot of people have had about these vaccines is, well, do these new vaccines goof up my DNA? And the question is no, or the answer to the question is no, because they never touch the DNA in the nucleus of your cell. And this mRNA technology will continue to be studied and evolve and will be used with other viruses. And they actually hope that one day it'll be used against cancer. Let's go on to the next slide. So we want to show you a graphic here that covers a few different things about the virus. The virus is shown in the upper right in this graphic as the spiky orange villain. And these viruses, as we know, get inhaled principally, and they go through our system and are floating around in our blood. And we want to neutralize those. So the messenger RNA is a little string of codes, what we call nucleic acids, that is shot into the muscle in your shoulder. And in the muscle cell, this mRNA is active and runs to the ribosomes, which are little protein factories in the outside, the cytoplasm, it's called, of cells. And it convinces these protein factories to start making the spike protein. The spike protein then generates an immune response of both antibodies and white cells called T cells in our blood, white blood cells that circulate around the body. And those are little fighter jets, which are organized and sensitized to particularly look for the spike proteins on the virus. So these two mechanisms, both antibodies and the white blood cell, T cells, go around and neutralize and clean out the virus that's in our blood. And what they do is present protection because those two mechanisms, those two ways of fighting persist in the body. And we know that thus far, those persist for years. How many years, we don't know yet, but it's certainly going to be able to cover us through this pandemic. So this immune response is going to protect our bodies from future infection by this virus. Next slide, please. We want you to know that of the two mRNA vaccines that are out there, this is the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, they're very similar. Both of them require 2 shots, and I've had the Pfizer vaccine, and I have friends who've had both. The only real difference between these two is that it's 21 days between the Pfizer vaccine, shot 1 and shot 2, and a little longer, 28 days for the Moderna shot 1 and shot 2. So the sequence of shots is very similar. The effectiveness of these vaccines is very similar. the side effects are very similar. So the side effects, if they occur, because many people have no side effects at all, more than half of people have no side effects at all. But of people who do get side effects, the other 40% of people are usually very mild, and they tend to be what's shown on this slide of some pain, redness, maybe a little swelling at the injection site. And in terms of your overall system, maybe some tiredness, maybe some headache. Sometimes some people get a little chills and fever, but it's short lasting. So when I had my first shot back in December, I felt absolutely no reaction. And when I got my second Pfizer shot 3 weeks later, I then noticed fatigue that lasted for a day, but I was able to work, and it was nothing that a cup of coffee couldn't fix. So I would say some people have had somewhat more dramatic side effects, but they're generally very similar to getting a flu shot. Next slide, please. So there's some key takeaways here we want you to know, if I can summarize. First, it's recommended by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and by us that please get the first COVID vaccine that's made available to you. We don't really see any differences between the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. That all currently approved vaccines are generally safe, effective, and reduce your risk of severe illness. And getting the COVID vaccine can protect you. Now, I am certainly aware in the last week, there's been a temporary halt to the one-shot vaccine. That's the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the one that people call J&J for short. And what they observed is that there were 6 people out of 6 million who got this vaccine who had some serious side effects. For some reason, all of those people were young to middle-aged women. And there may have been something about the immune system in these unfortunate ladies that caused them to get sick and need to be hospitalized. And that is being further studied by an expert panel, and they'll have a recommendation. Just my own personal opinion on this is I think they will reapprove the J&J vaccine to be used in the general population in the very near future. But I do believe there will be a list of what they call cautions or warnings for patients and doctors that certain people shouldn't get that vaccine and should get the still being used mRNA vaccine. So I want to just emphasize that Johnson & Johnson vaccine works by a different mechanism that does involve the DNA. It's not an mRNA vaccine. Okay, well, I hope those things have been clear. I want to thank you for listening in today. And this is Dr. Prentiss Taylor from Doctor on Demand. Please stay healthy, and we hope for the best. Bye-bye.